Square root property is a really nice way to solve when you just have square roots, or you can solve it for a square root. So what I want to do each time is to remember that I want plus or minus as my answer. Because think about it. If you have the square root of 9, well, that could be 3, or it could be negative 3. Because 3 times 3 is 9, and negative 3 times negative 3 is also 9. So you have to have plus or minus in your answer. Okay, so this, we are just solving it for r. So to get r by itself, you're going to take the square root of 0. Well, there is no square root of 0, so it's just 0. This is the one case where you don't need a plus or minus, because you can't make a 0 become positive or negative. So then let's look at the next one. To solve for k, I'm taking the square root of 25. I know that the square root of 25 is 5 and negative 5, so I could write 5 and negative 5, or I can just write it as plus or minus 5. And the plus or minus is what you're going to more commonly see, because that means I have both of those. So if I'm solving number 3 for x, the first thing I need to do is divide by 49. So now I have x squared equals 4 over 49. So then, to get x by itself, I'm taking the square root of both of these. So the nice thing when you have fractions is that you can take the square root of both. So the square root of 4 is 2, the square root of 49 is 7, and the only thing I need to remember is my plus or minus sign to get my answer. Same thing here. To get r squared by itself, we're going to add 1 to the other side. Then to get r, you're going to take the square root of 1. Well, the square root of 1 is plus or minus 1. So now I want to get these by themselves, to get the x by itself. So the first thing that I want to do is subtract 6 to the other side. So now I have 4x squared equals 36. Then divide by 4. So you could divide this and get 9. Or you could factor both of them down if you wanted to, do the square root of both of those and then simplify later. Either way will work. So then x is going to be plus or minus the square root of 9. Well, the square root of 9 is plus or minus 3. On the next one, I want to add 7 to the other side. So I have 36b squared is equal to 64. Divide by 36. So I have 64 over 36. Now, you could try to reduce this, but I would caution you not to, just because of the fact that both of these have perfect square roots. So the next step is to say the square root of 64 and the square root of 36. Because they're both perfect square roots, it's just going to end up as the fraction 8 over 6, which you can reduce to 4 over 3, plus or minus. Okay, so if you would have reduced that to begin with, you might have had a little bit trickier of a time. So as soon as you get to a perfect square, just take the square root. Okay, this one you want to divide by negative 2. So I'm going to get that b squared is equal to 37. So then I want to take the square root of 37. Well, that doesn't have a perfect square root, so you're going to leave that as b equals plus or minus the square root of 37. And that's fine. Okay, my next one, dividing this by negative 4. So I'm going to get that a squared is equal to 88. Then I want to do plus or minus the square root of 88. So 88 also doesn't have a perfect square root, but what I do know is that I can break that down. I can do 11 times 8, 4 times 2, and 2 times 2. So I have a couple of 2's. They're going to go out, and then I have a single 2 and a single 11 that are going to stay in. So my answer to this is plus or minus 2 root 22. And that's the answer that you want for what a is equal to. Looking at our last two, subtract 4 to the other side. So I have that 2x squared is equal to 102. Divide by 2. X squared is equal to 51. Then x is going to be equal to plus or minus the square root of 51. Well, 51 breaks down into 3 and 17, which are both prime numbers. So your answer to this is plus or minus the square root of 51. And our last one is to add 10. So then 6x squared is going to be equal to 498. Divide by 6. So x squared is going to be equal to 83. And then I try to break 83 down, and it does not have anything to break down into. So plus or minus the square root of 83 is your answer to that.